The Real Estate Photography Podcast is brought to you by tourbuzz.net, high definition virtual tour and photograph hosting. Now, with interactive floor plans. Sign up for your free trial today. Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Photography Podcast with Mike Muriello. This is an interview with Brian McWeeny. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Mike.
How's it going?
Doing great.
Brian is an interior and architectural photographer, among other things, located in the Dallas area in Texas. So, Brian, why don't you just, tell us about yourself and what it is that you do?
Okay, great. As you said, I am primarily an interior photographer, but I shoot interiors for both magazine and for advertising, and I also do some catalog work that involve room sets, interior type things. I also shoot some products, still life, but by and large, most of my work is in interior work.
That's great. That's great. I think a lot of us who read, listen into this website, we all do kind of the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, so we can really relate. And what I wanted to ask you was, your venue, being in magazines, product stuff, what was your path to those venues? How did you get into magazines as opposed to working directly for, realtors or something?
Well, I guess my path that led me to more interior photography was actually driven, I think, by a little bit by the marketplace I'm in, the Dallas area, and also by, I think, the nature of, or the quality of my lighting. I started realizing there were a lot more product photographers, still life photographers, tabletop photographers than there were, say, interior room set, bedding type photographers that needed to do a lot more lighting to really make the product, stand out, to create an environment with, in a studio that, felt more like a real environment. So I think my lighting skills just sort of led me into this direction. The clients started liking what I was doing and, kind of went where the clients wanted me to go. So I started doing a lot of that. I realized that there were a lot of magazines out there that I could maybe try doing a few more interesting type shoots. Not that the products and the clients aren't interesting, but sometimes the interiors for magazines are a little more interesting, and build up some nice images for my portfolio.
Yeah, I was going to say that's how I found Brian. I was at my grandmother-in-law's place for Thanksgiving, and I picked up a magazine. First off, I should say I should probably subscribe to these magazines in the first place, but I didn't. And I want to say it was. Do you remember the magazine? I should search through my email.
I think the picture that you sent me that you found was from Better Homes and Gardens.
That's it. Yeah, and my reaction was after I saw it, and I picked up my jaw. I got that back. I said, "Wow, I have to talk to this guy. He knows something that we all don't." And we'll show that photo first when we get to that point. But I just wanted to say, it was from the magazines that really attracted my attention. But I wanted to also kind of ask you and kind of state out, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, your path wasn't, I am going to be in magazines, this is what I'm going to do. It was more of, I want to make a living, and this is the path that it's going to be. Does that sound right?
Well, yeah, I do like making a living. I think I've always had an interest in architecture. I mean, going way back since I was a kid, believe it or not, I've worked summer jobs as a carpenter. I've worked on every studio that I've ever, had in my career. I've always built things. So I think there's always a tendency in my career towards either interiors or architecture or buildings. And I think, like I said, the clients started showing up saying, wow, you can really light. I can't find any guys that can do this. So obviously I wanted to stay working and I wanted to keep paying my bills. So I kind of took this path. But no, I did not intend to become a real estate architectural photographer.
Well, I was going to say, I didn't either. That's how it works out. And I'm very happy with what I do, and I imagine you are as well. But I was going to say, it sounds like you capitalized on that market. When someone says, wow, you can light, that's something I haven't seen. How did you go about capitalizing on that?
Well, when I realized that these clients appreciated what I was doing, I realized that this was something that I could capitalize on. I started weaning out some product shots out of my portfolio, my website. I started playing up a little bit more of my interior work, both in my portfolio, and within the past couple of years, just totally revamped my website and played up a little bit more of the interior work and the magazine work, and was hoping that the catalog retail type clients would see this and be able to understand that it could be translated to their product shots, their room set shots for their coffee tables or their couches or for their bedding.
Well, that's great. I was going to say, so revamping your website and kind of tooling it to the direction that was more interested is kind of a key component.
Yeah, and I think it's hard when you're starting out, but at some point in your career, I just think you start focusing your work a little bit more. It's not that you're trying to exclude people per se, but I think you're trying to get an image, some continuity out there. So when people see it, they say, "Oh, he can do, what I need him to do." And just it kind of worked that way, and I'm kind of glad it has.
That's great. That's fantastic. All right. Well, hey, I want to switch gears a little bit. Not really switch gears, but move on to talking about the interiors that you were just talking about. Specifically, well, we'll talk about lighting in a second, but I want to talk about staging, because that's the first thing that came to my mind when I was looking at your stuff. I was like, this is all beautifully staged. And I wanted to ask, do you do it? Does someone else do it for you? Is it I'll be quiet.
No, that's fine. No, yeah, I think the whole term that you use, staging, I think it can apply to a lot of things. The first thing to me in the staging area is finding the angle. Finding, it's always the first most important part is where the camera is, because I try to do that early on so that everything gets focused in on what we're going to see, what's going to show up within the frame that the camera sees, instead of the person just walking around saying, "Oh, isn't this a wonderful room?" And you're like, "Yeah, that's a wonderful room, but we're only going to see one wall, so let's focus in on one wall." So in staging, first thing for me is where the camera is going to be, where what elements are going to show up in the frame. So then I'm working with maybe furniture pieces that might need a little adjusting, might need a little repositioning in the frame so that they're either not tangent with something, just cleaning up the shot basically, so it may be a little bit more graphic, a quicker read, so people can see exactly what you want them to see. Other part of staging, yes, when I'm working with a magazine, a lot of times it's basically just myself and the person representing the magazine, maybe the homeowner. We'll work with elements that they have in the house. The person from the magazine might bring in some fresh floral or something maybe that'll help the color story, play up some of the elements that might be in the room. And it's, like I said, it's a very small crew, 2-3 people maybe. So I try to be active in some of these decisions, at the same time realize my most important thing is to make sure, the camera, the technical aspects, the lighting aspects are all done. So all of the staging that we are doing is going to show up really, really good on, in the camera.
Gotcha. And you had mentioned color. The word color just came out briefly when I was going through your stuff. I don't have it up right now, but when I was going through it, color was a big. It was going off in my brain. I don't know if
Yeah.
you probably understand what I'm saying. I said
Yes.
this is all the color was the tones were, it seemed to me, specifically selected, carefully. A lot of careful attention was paid to each one of these objects. Or can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think I'm glad you saw it. I really do think color is important in a lot of ways. Even designing my website, I went old school. We made prints of every image that we were considering to put on the website, and we storyboarded it so we could see what color. If we were on a blue palette with some of the images, when we transitioned to another color palette on the website, I wanted it to be, I wanted to look good. So I think I'm very aware of color. When we're looking at an interior, we're hoping that you're seeing the most important thing in the interior, not something that is off color or the wrong color, and it's just pulling your eye towards that one item. So, color, is important. We don't want to put floral arrangements, that are just going to compete or fight or draw attention to themselves. We're very aware of the color palette. When I'm shooting, I'm trying to make sure my exposure values are correct, because I don't want the room wall color to go too dark. I don't want it to get too washed out if it's picking up a highlight or something, because all of that's going to change the color. So I think I'm very aware of color, and I think it really, without going crazy with the color and making it surreal, I really think color can really help some of the interior photography that you do.
Yeah, I was going to say your photography, specifically in regards to color, has its own. It's like a signature. I don't know if that's even the word I'm trying to say. Is when I see it, I say, "Wow, that's very stylistic of you," and it identifies with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and of course, it also helps to, shoot a lot, so that, when you do get these rooms that work, you hang on to them and you put them in your portfolio, and, see the rooms that don't work, even though you did a technically, good job and the client was happy, you may not need to show that. You may not want to show it because it doesn't really, strengthen your portfolio.
That's actually a really good point, and I'm glad you made that, because I think a lot of people, as you cruise portfolios and as somebody who goes around and just looks at a lot of portfolios can easily be detracted, by you have some really strong stuff, and then as you get in there, you start to say, nah, you start to back away a little bit. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And,
exactly.
Realizing what to take out can easily strengthen a portfolio.
Oh, completely. I completely agree with you, Mike. The if you're having a hard time, pulling something out of your portfolio, then you probably have, too many things in there. And sometimes I find it really good to get a third opinion, somebody who can just, look at it and say, wow, I really like this. Wow, I really like that. And then, if they say they're not real happy on, it's good to get feedback. Sometimes 12 good shots, I think always 12 good shots is a lot stronger than, 12 good shots mixed in with, 6 or 8 other shots that really probably shouldn't be there.
No, exactly. I would compare it to, you're back in school and you had to write that term paper, and you wrote it. You can't judge it or evaluate it as well as your significant other, who you ask, hey, go ahead and read that for me. And they are blatantly honest with you and say, this does nothing for me, or this is not good, or this is fantastic, one or the other, but they're a little separated from the construction, so they can kind of tell you how they feel about it as a viewer or a reader.
Exactly. Yeah. Another opinion, either, you need to be able to listen to the opinions. You also need to be able to evaluate them, what the strength is of their opinion, what the weaknesses of the opinion. But yeah, you need to be open to it. And, sometimes also if you just step away, if you're looking at the monitor or you're looking at your images or looking through the frame, sometimes just stepping away, look at something else, walk back, look at the monitor, look at the camera, remove yourself from the image for just a little bit, and a fresh set of eyes, you might see something you didn't see before, and you should definitely be aware of that.
No, I completely agree. I really do. Now, I wanted to talk about one last thing in regards to staging. Mm-hmm. You probably know what I'm going to say. Dogs.
Yes.
Well, let me start this by saying, first off, I had a shoot this morning. I got up and I was in the master bedroom, and there was this big dog. I knew that I was going to be talking to you later today, so I was like, you know what I'll do? I'll just try it. The dog was sitting still. It looked really nice in the light. I botched it. I couldn't do it. It was my first try. I could honestly. After I took that photo, I said, I'm going to have to ask Brian how he does this. So do tell.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure I really planned this, but somehow I became really good at getting dogs in my interior shots. I'm really good with dogs. I've had dogs. I've have very well trained, well behaved dogs. And I guess, I don't know, dogs react to me very well. They listen to me very well. And I'm a big proponent of it. I can't see anybody, 99% of the people wouldn't like seeing a picture of a room, with a dog in it. Mm-hmm. It's just, there's something about it. And I've had some success at it.
Well, that's fantastic. Do you use your dogs or someone else's?
Oh, I generally always use the homeowner's dog.
The homeowner's dog.
Yeah, I've worked homeowners' dogs in, interior shoots for magazines. I have used professional quote unquote dogs.
Yeah.
Agencies for ads and for catalogs, and had some success there. But it's hit or miss. It's always good to get the shot before the dog gets in there, just in case the dog decides to, do something he shouldn't, and, at least you have the good shot done. But yeah, I like working people and dogs into my interior shots, and I've just had some success with it.
That's great. That's really, really great. All right, shifting gears again. Lighting.
Okay.
So you mentioned earlier that people have recognized that you can light. Can you tell us what that means and kind of describe your style?
Sure. I would describe my style of lighting as natural. If I see a room that has floor-to-ceiling windows, and they're going to be in the background of my shot, I'm going to try to capture the feeling that room has with lighting. I don't overcomplicate things with my lighting. I don't think you need 6 or 8 or 10, lights to light a room. You might, but generally speaking, my lighting style is natural. I try to basically mimic or amplify what the room is giving me so that I can get it technically to turn out or properly turn out on film or digital.
I like that. And I like, because what you're saying is sometimes people could be confused and say, I'm going to light this room up, and they think, basically, I've got to make it look like the lights are on, and there's a lot of light in the room. And what you're saying is you want to create what your eyes are seeing onto the yeah.
Right. I want to create the image of the way the room looks when I'm looking at it. I'm trying to, if the room is, if it's a powder bathroom and it has really dark, colored walls painted, and they just have a few, little light fixtures on the wall, I'm not going to, overlight the room. I'm not going to put a lot of front lighting on it. I'm not going to put crazy window shaft lighting come in. It's a powder bathroom. It's probably not going to have very much window light. It's going to be, just kind of dark and moody. So I'm going to light it. I'm not going to not put any light in there. I mean, I'm going to use a big power pack and a strobe head and some diffusion, but I'm going to try to balance it all out with what the room is giving me. I'm going to make it turn out so it'll reproduce, but I'm not going to recreate the lighting or just overlight the room just because, I need to or I want to.
I gotcha. When you were learning, maybe you're teaching yourself. I don't know. Did someone walk you through it, or did you kind of do self-discovery, or?
As far as my lighting?
Yes.
I think when I was starting out as an assistant photographer in Dallas, I was fortunate to work for some really strong old school photographers that, I'm dating myself here, but this is pre-digital. So I was working for guys that had to get the shot done right with their lighting because, we were shooting film and these were, national ads they were doing. And I soaked up what they were doing. I understood that the importance of lighting, no matter what they were shooting, whether it was a metal air conditioning unit or, something really, really beautiful, like, a table full of food. I really keyed in on the fact that good lighting made for a much better picture, no matter what you were photographing.
And it sounds like you also had to nail it. It's
Yes.
not as, yeah, you can't use the recovery slider on film.
Oh, there's, and I'm not poo-pooing digital because I shoot digital. I welcome the strength that digital has, but I do understand that, like anything, if you get it right from the get-go, if you have a good foundation, like you're building a house or building anything, it's a lot easier to fix things later on than if you don't have a good foundation. So I try to do that with my lighting. I try to get my lighting right. I understand digital. I understand histograms, but I try to get my lighting right so that it looks like I'm not lighting the room. It looks like the room is just there.
Well, great. Speaking of lighting, speaking of the room, let's take a look.
Sure.
All right. So we're now looking at photo number 1, which is the photo that I saw originally in that magazine, and I was just, I said, okay, I got to talk to this guy. So,
Right.
Brian, have at it. Say anything you want. Tell us you can tell us the background of how you became to photograph this, or how you lit it, or how you composed it. Just, I'll step out now.
Sure. I'll cover all three of those areas. The shoot was for Better Homes and Gardens magazine. It's a Meredith Publications. They use a lot of they use local and regional photographers. Basically, if they have a house that they're interested in and it's in the Dallas area, they would call me and I would get the gig. This house was a total remodel, and it was a 1940s. Not very big house. And when I drove up to it, I thought, well, this is kind of odd. There's really not much to this house. It looks like a very small 1940s house. Well, when I walked in and I got to the back where they did the remodel, I realized this is going to be a really nice shot. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of attention to details. The vaulted ceilings, the tongue groove, the exposed beams, the hardwood floors. It was a very nicely done remodel. So my goal for this shot was to give a sense of where the kitchen was in relation to the dining room. And as a lot of you guys and girls will probably know, kitchen photography, it's kind of hard to really shoot just a kitchen sometimes. So giving it some context was important. So the shot, again, kind of got very graphic. It was a vertical shot. I tried to show a little bit of the environment in the dining area, the dining table, which would hopefully draw your eye to the back into the kitchen area.
Right. And I was going to say, I'll jump in for a second, the vertical shot, is that common for magazine publications, or was this because you wanted it to be this way?
Well, I think it just the shot, the shot lent itself. I wouldn't, I hate fighting a shot. It's like, shooting a vertical shot of a sofa. Why do it? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
It's a left-right shot. This shot was vertical because the ceiling, the detail in the ceiling, the pendant lights coming down. That was basically where they tied the remodel into the old house, and it lent itself that way. And I will also say magazines tend to like vertical shots because pages are vertical, and if you get a really good vertical shot, you might get a full page photo. So
Exactly. Because that's what I was going to say when I do some photojournalism for my James Madison University, which is right down the street from where I live. I'm always told when I do something, I say, "Okay, we want a portrait and landscape, and for every shot."
right.
And what you were saying is you hate to fight it, and they're two completely different beasts, and
Completely.
yeah, it's tough to say, oh, just get me everything.
Right. Yeah. It's. I mean, if you can give it to them, hopefully they'll see the difference, and hopefully one shot will be stronger than the other. Sometimes you luck out and you come across something that might work both ways, but by and large, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to talk a little bit more about that shot?
Yeah, sure, go for it. Maybe so that you got the context and all that stuff. What about lighting for this? Because I really like the subtlety of I feel like I'm in the room and I'm not there with a bunch of lights. Let's just say that.
Right. Again, I think it goes back to what being aware of what the room is giving you. What if you were looking at this room? You really have to be aware of where the light is coming. And to the right of the shot, there's a big sunlit, vaulted ceiling family room. So it has a lot of light bouncing around off the white ceilings and coming in through the windows and the French doors. So basically, I'm trying to keep that feel that the light is coming from the right. Mm-hmm. There's a window back over the kitchen sink, or back in the kitchen there, actually. And so I also have to make sure your eye gets drawn into the kitchen. I think I lit this shot with maybe 3 heads. There's a head to the right, and I'm just shooting it through a 6 foot by 6 foot scrim panel, white scrim panel, mm-hmm. and it's lighting up sort of the dining area and the little breakfast bar. I have a light on a head outside on a pocket wizard shooting through the, I believe, shooting through the window or shooting at the item that's outside the window, because I really needed to bring that value up, because I didn't really want to see the neighbor's red brick house.
Yeah.
It was a bit distracting. It wasn't our color palette, which is the thing we talked about.
Right.
And then I just needed some overall value into the kitchen to make sure the white kitchen cabinets didn't die on me. So fortunately, to the left in the kitchen there's a doorway, and I basically just made the doorway into a giant box and covered it with vellum and put a light in that room and just kind of softly lit up the rest of the kitchen.
Wow.
So I'm a big fan of light coming from one direction. I can't stand shadows going 2 ways. I can't stand highlights being on one side in the front and the other side in the back. But in this case, I just made sure my values were appropriate. The strongest light was coming over from the right side, and then just a little bit of fill, so I didn't get any cross shadows to light up the kitchen.
Well done. I really like it because it you're basically replicating an organic lighting style, and I just say flat out, excellent.
I like I said, I had some good teachers when I was starting out, and I become very aware of it. And it wasn't until I worked with an art director who actually put into words that my lighting, because I hadn't really thought about it, but she said, I'm the kind of photographer that lights like he lives on a planet with one sun. So I've always remembered that, and I at all times that I can, I try to keep my lighting very directional, very natural, like there is one sun in the shot somewhere.
Fantastic. All right, let's move on to the second photo of 3. And let me just say, I selected this one. I'm sure you'll talk about this. I mean, obviously, because we're talking about light, is how the light gradiates from one side to the other. And we're going to have to assume that there's a big old window over there.
This is the dining.
The dining, yeah.
The dining room. Well, this was for a national magazine. It was a high-rise penthouse. I actually shot this in 4x5, film, which even I laugh about a little bit. They wanted it shot in 4x5, and I said, sure, I can do it. So we're shooting film here. There are mirrors everywhere in this place.
Right.
So you had to be very aware not to either show up in the mirror in front of you or in the mirror that was behind you, reflecting in the mirror in front of you. So
you got low.
Right. So the camera angle right away got dictated to me. I'm just hiding behind something so I don't show up in the reflection in the mirror. Lighting wise, like I said, we're shooting film here. We're shooting 4x5, so I can't just rely on whatever daylight was coming in from the right side from the big, huge windows. But I was aware that was where I had to light. That's where I had to mimic, the light that was coming in. So we opened the curtains as much as possible. There were some shears in there. This is a very large, windows, a very expensive place. They had very nice, it worked out very nice. And I probably put about 2,000 watt seconds, if not more, of strobe on a head out there shooting through the window, just to basically amplify and mimic, what was going on with the shot. There was no other opportunity to put a light behind me, a light in front of the camera, anything, because of the mirror that's very predominant in the shot there.
Gotcha.
So I put probably some fill cards, some very large fill cards on the left side, but I tried to keep it very natural. I had to feather the light a little bit so that it was not hitting the first chair that's closest to the light as much as I could. I had to feather it a little bit so it went back to the back and hopefully threw a little light back there. And I think it was a pretty shot.
I do as well. This one is it really caught my eye, and I just thought, hey, I want to hear the story about this.
It basically just one light.
Amazing how that works.
Yeah.
All right, let's hit up the last photo, photo 3.
Okay.
I won't even talk. I'll just enjoy.
Okay. I think I made reference to this. Photo 3 is the one with the windows in the back.
That's right.
Floor to ceiling. This was another national magazine shoot. It was a mid-century mid-rise apartment. It was about on the 3rd floor or so, and it had floor-to-ceiling windows. The entire exterior wall of the space. It was a very interesting space. So again, this shot sort of dictated my lighting. We're on the 3rd floor. There's a little balcony edge outside, and the homeowner did have some real interesting potted plants out there, which helped, give me a little something out there. But there was also another mid-rise across the parking lot that was red brick, and it filled the entire back window. So I had to overcome that, and I'm shooting with a Hasselblad and a Phase 1 digital back. So first thing is I'm dragging my shutter. I'm getting my shutter selection down so that I'm blowing out the red brick wall, the building back there, so it's not, contaminating my shot.
Gotcha.
So I've selected my shutter speed, appropriate shutter speed, so I can have something out there, but nothing, that shows up too much. Uh, and again, with I'm shooting straight into windows, so I have to also be aware of anything behind me, because anything behind me that's lit or has any kind of hot value, reflection-wise, may show up in the glass in front of me. So again, I was kind of limited what I could do there. I basically did sort of a soft side light to the right to sort of open up some of the shadows so that my shot wasn't completely backlit,
Mm-hmm.
but trying to keep the light coming basically from the same direction. There's a wall to the left full of books. I couldn't really put anything over there. There was a kind of a dark chair on the left, so just out of frame, I was able to put in a fill card to put a little highlight on the back of the chair. The floors were kind of dark, and the coffee tables were kind of dark.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to, just out of frame, sneak in a silver card to catch some of this daylight and some of my strobe light, and just put a little highlight back into the front of the coffee table to hopefully separate it out a little bit. And it turned out pretty nice, I think. I liked it.
Yeah, me too. I never would have known that there was a red brick building outside, and looking at it now and knowing everything that goes into it, it makes perfect sense as to why it is the way it is, why the windows are, overexposed to the extent that they are.
Yeah, and I do appreciate some aspects of the digital world that people are doing with HDR, and I'm not a proponent at all of surreal looking interiors. I think people relate to an interior shot that has a window in it, that the window should be the brightest thing in the room, because I think subconsciously, if you did walk into a room, the window would be something that would be very bright. And I think people just tend to relate to a shot of a room like that. If the stuff outside the window is the first thing you see in your photograph when they look at your photo, then they're not looking at the interior. They're looking at what's outside the window, and you've lost them.
I have to say, I totally agree. I'm not as into HDR as I am exposure fusion.
Yeah.
Personally, I really enjoy exposure fusion. It really helps me. It's a great jumping off point to get a really good, accurate exposure of kind of what your eyes are seeing. Like I said, it's a good jumping off point. It's not a good place to stop. And that being said, along with your whole the window should be the brightest thing, I just came back from a shoot in St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the owner of the home, little story here, he every other word out of his mouth as he kept coming back to my computer as I'm processing photos and working on them, he says, "It's all about the view. It's all about the view." Right over my shoulder every single time. I was like, "All right, John," and then he goes, "It's all about the view." And so he would come by constantly, and I tried to keep explaining. I said, "This is not this isn't going to work. If we keep bringing down the exposure artificially of the outside, so that we can see the view and kind of enjoy it as much as you want it to, it's bad photography. It's bad. It doesn't look right. It looks very artificial. Doesn't feel right, and I don't think he cared. I don't.
Yeah, and I completely know where you're coming from, Mike. You have somebody, you have a client, they think the view is good, and hey, you're in the Virgin Islands, I'm shooting in Dallas, so I'm sure your view is a lot better down there than mine of the red brick building was across the but that said, yeah, I like the exposure fusion. I gotta say, I don't do it as much as I probably could or should, but I think there's just a fine line as a interior real estate photographer. You just have to watch. You want the client to be happy, but at the same time, they're paying you, for your skill and your talent. Hopefully, if they're looking at a good shot of the interior, you get that with some good lighting, and hopefully you can balance the value out however you do with the exterior, so it looks nice and real.
Right. I feel like we could talk for hours about basically having the homeowner over your shoulder or hovering and saying, take a picture of this, and then one time I had a real estate agent. I'll go on in this story. Just hovering over me the entire time. Take a picture of this. Did you get that? Hey Mike, did you get that? And I basically I wanted to say, I'm here for a reason. you know, trust me. If I didn't take a picture of that, there's a reason why I didn't. Or oh, you want me to take a picture of that bookshelf? And you have to just take a deep breath and say, absolutely, I'll take a picture of that bookshelf for you.
Mike, you're absolutely right. It's it's a line that you have to walk. I think as you get a little bit more comfortable with what you do, whoever you are and whatever level you're at, I think you try to explain things. A lot of what we do is explain things to either the client or the art director. They if they're not very camera savvy, they're not going to understand what you're saying, and sometimes it's just quicker and easier just to take a picture of it, show them the picture so that they're removing themselves from the environment and they're actually looking at a framed picture and they're saying, oh, well, that doesn't look very good. Because you force them to look just at the picture, not just at everything, their two eyes, and you know how the brain works, and you see everything in the room and you really might like it, but you have to tell people the camera won't get that. Camera will get only so much, and you have to just, you have to explain a lot of things in this job.
Exactly. I totally agree. Communication, it's like when you do portrait photography, it's really good, for me anyway, this is what I like to do. Just doing this yesterday with agents who wanted specialized portraits, not that typical muslin background, which I love to do, not the muslin background, kind of environmental portraits. Every time I take a photo, I bring it, take a good shot, take it over and say, tell me, what I like about this is this, that, and the other thing. What do you think? And then we adjust. And then, basically communicate throughout the process so they're not left in the dark.
I agree completely, Mike. Involvement, communication, explaining what you're doing, why you're doing it. It's very important to the entire process.
Right. All right. So, second to last, before we get to the last question, which I ask everyone, is what else do you photograph besides interior and architecture?
Well, on a personal level, I like to travel. I wouldn't call myself a landscape photographer per se. I'm more of a urban scape or quirky and things that I find in the environment. Like I said, I like to get out in nature a little bit, but I'm not necessarily a landscape photographer. I have some of my work represented with Getty. Don't make a lot of money with it anymore, but I still shoot some stuff for stock. I still shoot personal work that all of a sudden becomes a series of images and maybe turns into a body of work. And I try to get some of those images out there on my website as my travel work, and I try to offer some of these images up for stock sale as rights managed images.
Okay. Oh, that's fantastic. I didn't know if you had shot weddings or events or portraits or.
I shot wedding one or two back in the film days, and I just was not a wedding photographer.
Gotcha.
Just right after that, I wasn't. But mostly work, interior work, and it's either for a magazine or for a corporation. Or lately, I've been shooting some also for homeowners, just high-end home in some of the neighborhoods in Dallas. Just like to have nicely done photography of their homes.
Fantastic. Brian, here's the question I ask everyone. What advice would you give somebody getting started in real estate photography?
Well, that isn't really that generic a question. I think it's a really good question. And I think just like anything, if it's something that you like, you're going to be a lot better at it. If it's something you have an interest in, I think you're going to be a lot better. My advice, if this is what you have an interest in, and this is something that you might have some talent and skill in, pursue it. there's going to be somebody out there who's going to say there's no money in it, or there's going to be somebody out there says there's a lot of money in it. I don't think you can listen to those people. If this is something that you like to do, you're good at it, you have an interest in it, pursue it. That said, there's a lot of competition out there, and it's going to be hard. I think you're going to find once you have a decent body of work to show, you're going to have to spend a lot of time networking, working on your website, working on marketing materials, and talking to people and deliver the goods, and hopefully they recommend you and you get some more work and pay bills and everybody be happy.
Well, thank you, Brian. I think that is a great piece of advice. I could, once again, just like the other topics, go on about that. But we will have to draw the line somewhere. So with that, I say thank you for your information. Thank you for advice. And thanks for being a part of our podcast.
My pleasure, Mike. Anytime.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Bye.